Alma was folding laundry in the living room when the sound of Kofi's laughter floated from the nursery. It was not his usual soft giggle. This was loud, joyful, as if someone was tickling him. Curious, she walked in, smiling, but froze when she saw him. Kofi was sitting upright in his crib, his tiny hands waving toward an empty corner of the room. His eyes sparkled as if he was looking at someone Alma couldn't see. She glanced at the corner, nothing but bare walls and soft light coming through the window. Yet Kofi kept giggling, kicking his legs like he was playing with a friend. The next day, at the exact same time, 3:30 p.m., it happened again. This time, Kofi's eyes followed something invisible up toward the ceiling, and he laughed so hard his little body rocked. Alma felt a faint chill run through the air, but there was no open window, no fan, nothing that could explain it. When she told her husband Kwame, he chuckled and said, "Babies laugh at anything, Alma. Maybe it's the sunlight." But Alma couldn't ignore the coldness she felt each time. A few days later, their elderly neighbor Nana came over. As soon as she stepped into the nursery, she stopped in her tracks. Her eyes widened, and she whispered, "This room, a woman named Efua died here in childbirth years ago." That night, while cleaning, Alma found an old photograph tucked under a loose floorboard. In it, Efua was holding a baby who looked exactly like Kofi. Alma began watching the clock. Each day at 3:30 p.m., the time Efua had died, Kofi would laugh at the same corner. One afternoon, his babbling sounded eerily like "Mama." Frightened, Alma sought out Kojo, the local healer. He warned, "Efua's spirit may be trying to claim your son." On the seventh day, Kofi laughed harder than ever. Alma felt a cold, unseen hand brush her cheek. That night, Kojo performed a cleansing. Kofi cried through it but finally fell into deep sleep. The next day at 3:30, Kofi only smiled softly at the corner, and the old photo was gone. It started to feel less like a coincidence and more like a pattern. Every single afternoon, right when the clock struck 3:30, Kofi's face would light up as if someone had just walked into the room. Alma began watching closely. She would sit quietly in the corner, waiting, and without fail, at that exact minute, his tiny hands would reach upward, fingers opening and closing in a playful wave toward the ceiling. His eyes would follow something she could not see, moving slowly as if it drifted above him. The first time she noticed the timing, she brushed it off. But by the third day, Alma's skin prickled with unease. The nursery always felt different at 3:30. The air grew heavier, and a faint chill brushed past her arms. There was no breeze, no sound, just her baby's joyful laughter filling the space. He giggled and babbled like he was answering someone's teasing. Alma tried calling his name to break his focus, but he wouldn't even glance at her. His whole attention stayed fixed on that invisible presence. She even moved his crib to another side of the room, thinking maybe he was fascinated by light patterns or shadows, but it made no difference. At 3:30 sharp, his gaze always returned to the same empty spot. She began to dread the afternoons. Sometimes, she thought she heard a faint hum or whisper when Kofi was waving, but it was so soft she couldn't be sure. Her heart raced as she watched him squeal in delight at something she couldn't see or hear. Alma started keeping track, writing down each occurrence in a small notebook. 3:30 p.m. Laughing. Waving. Looking up. The entries were all the same, day after day. She didn't tell Kwame at first, he would just laugh again. But deep inside, she felt this was no harmless baby habit. Something, or someone, was keeping this time like a daily appointment, and her son was the only one who could see it. And every day it happened, the chill in the room seemed to grow colder. That evening, Alma finally told Kwame what she had been noticing. She described the exact timing, the way Kofi's eyes followed something she couldn't see, and the strange chill that crept into the room. Kwame leaned back in his chair, smiling, and shook his head. "Alma, babies do this all the time," he said lightly. "They see reflections, light, shadows, their imagination runs wild. You're overthinking it." Alma frowned. "This isn't about light, Kwame. The air changes. It feels cold, heavy. It's not normal." Kwame chuckled and pulled her close. "You're just tired. You've been home with him all day, your mind is playing tricks. Tomorrow, I'll come in at 3:30 and see for myself." The next day, Kwame kept his word. At exactly 3:30, they were both in the nursery. Kofi was lying in his crib, quiet at first. Then, as if on cue, his little face brightened. He turned toward the corner, eyes wide, and raised his tiny hand to wave at the ceiling. His legs kicked with excitement, and laughter bubbled out of him. Kwame smiled, leaning against the wall. "See? He's happy. Probably looking at the way the sunlight moves." But Alma wasn't smiling. She could feel it again, the sudden drop in temperature, a chill that crawled along her skin. It wasn't in her head, it was real. She watched Kwame rub his arms briefly before catching himself, as if he didn't want to admit he felt it too. "Did you feel that?" she asked quietly. Kwame hesitated, then shrugged. "Maybe the air conditioning draft. Don't scare yourself with ghost stories." Alma bit her lip, frustrated. She knew what she felt, and no logical explanation could erase the cold that seeped into the room every afternoon. Kofi kept giggling, his gaze fixed upward, oblivious to their tension. That night, Alma lay awake beside her husband, her mind replaying the scene. She couldn't shake the feeling that Kwame was wrong, and that whatever visited her son at 3:30 was more than just shifting light. One sunny afternoon, Alma's elderly neighbor Nana came by to drop off some homemade soup. They chatted for a while, and then Alma, without thinking much of it, invited her in to see Kofi. As they walked toward the nursery, Kofi's cheerful giggles filled the hallway. But the moment Nana stepped through the doorway, she stopped abruptly. Her smile faded, her eyes widened, and she gripped the doorframe for support. Alma frowned. "Nana, are you okay?" Nana's gaze swept across the room, settling for a long moment on the corner where Kofi often stared. Her voice came out in a low whisper. "This room. I didn't know you were using this room for the baby." Alma felt her chest tighten. "Why? What's wrong with it?" Nana hesitated, then sighed heavily. "Years ago, before you moved here, a young woman named Efua lived in this house. She was expecting her first child. On the day of her delivery, something went terribly wrong. She passed away right here in this room, and so did the baby." Alma's mouth went dry. She glanced at Kofi, who was sitting in his crib, happily waving at the same corner Nana had just stared at. "They say," Nana continued quietly, "Efua's spirit never left. Some believe she still waits here, searching for her child." A chill ran down Alma's spine. The story fit too perfectly with the strange events she'd been witnessing. Did people see anything?" she asked. Nana nodded slowly. "Sometimes, they'd hear a baby crying when no one was inside. Other times, the air would grow cold for no reason. I never thought much of it until now." Kofi laughed suddenly, as if reacting to something only he could see. Nana took a small step back, clutching the rosary beads around her neck. "You must be careful, Alma," she warned, her tone firm but trembling. "Not every smile comes from a friendly spirit." Alma stood frozen, her mind racing. The room felt heavier now, the air thicker. For the first time, she realized that maybe she wasn't imagining anything at all, and that whatever was visiting her son might have been here long before she was. It was a quiet afternoon when Alma decided to do some deep cleaning in the nursery. She moved the crib to sweep underneath and noticed a loose floorboard near the corner where Kofi always stared. Curious, she knelt down and pried it up. A faint smell of dust and age rose into the air. Inside the small gap was a thin, worn envelope, its paper yellowed with time. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a single black and white photograph. The edges were curled, the image faded, but the faces were clear enough to make her heart pound. A young woman, beautiful and smiling, held a newborn in her arms. Alma instantly knew, this was Efua, the woman Nana had spoken about. But it wasn't Efua's face that made Alma's breath catch. It was the baby. The tiny face staring back from the photo looked exactly like Kofi. The same round cheeks, the same wide eyes, even the faint curl of hair on the forehead. For a moment, Alma's mind raced, searching for logic. How could a child from decades ago look so identical to her son? She sat on the floor, staring at the picture, her pulse racing. The nursery around her felt strangely still, as if the air was waiting. Then Kofi, who had been quietly playing in his crib, suddenly let out a soft giggle and looked straight at her, or rather, at the photo in her hands. A chill moved through her. "Kofi, do you see her?" she whispered without thinking. His tiny hand reached out toward the photograph, and he laughed again, eyes bright with recognition, as if greeting an old friend. Alma quickly slipped the photo back into the envelope and tucked it deep into her dresser drawer, but the image was burned into her mind. That night, she lay awake, the photograph's details replaying in her thoughts. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was identical. And now, she couldn't shake the feeling that Kofi's daily laughter at 3:30 was not random at all. Somewhere, somehow, Efua still lingered, and she knew exactly who her son was. Alma couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. The resemblance between Kofi and the baby in Efua's arms haunted her every moment. She began paying even closer attention to her son's strange laughter. It didn't take long for her to notice something she had overlooked before. It wasn't just that Kofi laughed at 3:30 every afternoon. That exact time matched what Nana had told her about Efua's death. The young mother and her newborn had taken their last breath in this very room at 3:30 p.m., years ago. The realization made Alma's skin prickle. She began watching the clock obsessively. No matter where Kofi was, in his crib, on the floor, even in her arms, the moment the minute hand touched 3:30, his eyes would drift toward the same corner. A smile would bloom on his face, followed by that soft, bubbling laughter. The air around them would grow cooler, as if an unseen presence had quietly stepped into the room. One afternoon, Alma sat beside him on the rug, determined not to blink. She wanted to see everything, to catch even the slightest hint of what he was reacting to. As the time came, Kofi's expression shifted from calm to pure joy. He waved, eyes fixed on the empty space above. Then, his lips moved, forming a sound she had never heard from him before. At first, it was a jumble of baby babble. But then, as clear as if he had been practicing, came a single word, Mama. Alma froze. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Kofi had never said that word before. She leaned closer, whispering, "Who are you talking to, Kofi?" But he didn't look at her. His little hands clapped together as he repeated the sound, Mama, giggling in between. Her mouth went dry. Was he calling out to her? Or, to someone else? When it finally ended, and Kofi turned back to play, Alma sat in silence. The chill in the room lingered long after 3:30 had passed, and for the first time, she truly feared that her son's laughter wasn't meant for her at all. Alma could no longer keep the fear to herself. The laughter, the cold air, the word Mama, it all weighed on her like a dark cloud. She remembered the old healer in the village, Kojo, a man known for sensing what others could not see. Early the next morning, she wrapped Kofi in a blanket and walked to his small, dimly lit hut at the edge of town. Kojo was sitting cross-legged by a low table, grinding herbs. His eyes, sharp and knowing, lifted to meet hers before she even spoke. "You've come because your child is laughing at someone you cannot see," he said slowly, as if reading her thoughts. Alma's heart skipped. Yes, it happens every day at the same time. The air turns cold. He calls out for Mama, but not to me. Kojo's expression darkened. He set the herbs aside and leaned forward. "This is not a game, Alma. A spirit has found its way to your child. From what you've said, I believe it is Efua. She lost her baby in this very room, and her soul has not found peace. Now, she may think your son is hers." Alma's grip on Kofi tightened. But she wouldn't hurt him, would she? The healer shook his head slowly. A spirit bound by grief does not think like the living. She may not mean harm, but she may try to take him with her. Alma felt her chest tighten. Take him? How? Kojo's voice dropped to a whisper. Through the bond she is creating. Every laugh, every gaze, every time he calls her, it pulls him closer to her world. Alma's stomach churned. What do I do? You must break the connection before it is too strong, Kojo said firmly. It will take a cleansing, one done at night, when the veil is weakest. But you must be ready. Spirits do not like to be sent away, especially when they believe they have found what they lost. As Alma left the hut, Kojo's final words echoed in her mind. She looked down at Kofi's peaceful face, her heart pounding with dread. The thought of losing him, in any way, was unbearable. Alma had been counting the days since she spoke to Kojo, dreading what each afternoon would bring. The connection between Kofi and whatever was visiting seemed to grow stronger. His laughter came faster, his eyes sparkled brighter, and the cold in the nursery deepened. Kojo's warning played in her head over and over, every laugh was pulling him closer. When the 7th day arrived, Alma woke with a knot in her stomach. She stayed close to Kofi all morning, watching him like a shadow. As 3:30 approached, the air in the room began to shift, heavier and colder than she had ever felt before. Her breath came out in a faint mist, though no window was open. Kofi was sitting in his crib, clutching his soft toy. The moment the clock struck, his entire face lit up with pure delight. He dropped the toy and raised both arms, waving eagerly at the same empty corner. This time, his giggles turned into loud, uncontrollable laughter, the kind that shook his small body. Alma's heart pounded. She stepped closer, calling his name, but he didn't look at her. His gaze stayed locked upward, as if someone was leaning over him. The air seemed to press against her skin, making it hard to breathe. Then it happened. A sudden, icy brush slid across her cheek, not like a breeze, but like the deliberate touch of a hand. Alma gasped and stumbled back. Her skin burned with cold where it had touched her, and her mind screamed that it wasn't her imagination. Kofi's laughter grew softer, almost tender, as if he was responding to that touch too. Alma reached into the crib and pulled him close, her hands shaking. Even in her arms, he craned his neck to look over her shoulder at the corner. The air slowly warmed again, and the room fell silent except for Alma's rapid breathing. She knew now that Kojo had been right. The spirit was no longer just watching. It had crossed the space between them, and it had touched her. And that meant it could touch Kofi too. That night, Alma did not wait another day. She wrapped Kofi in a thick blanket and carried him through the quiet village to Kojo's hut. The moon was high, and the air felt still, almost watchful. Kojo was already waiting outside, a bundle of dried herbs in one hand and a clay bowl in the other. Without a word, he led them inside. The room was dim, lit only by a few flickering candles. Kojo motioned for Alma to place Kofi on a mat in the center. The moment she set him down, Kofi began to whimper, his little fists tightening. Kojo sprinkled a circle of crushed leaves and strange powders around the mat, then lit the herbs, filling the air with a sharp, earthy scent that made Alma's eyes water. Kojo began chanting in a low, rhythmic voice, his hands moving over the flames, guiding the smoke toward Kofi. The baby's whimpers turned into loud cries, his body twisting as if trying to get away from something only he could see. Alma's heart ached, but Kojo's stern gaze told her not to interfere. The chanting grew louder, stronger, and the smoke seemed to swirl unnaturally, as if pushed by invisible hands. Alma felt the temperature in the hut drop, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a shadow pass across the wall, even though no one else was there. Kofi's cries reached a piercing pitch, then suddenly stopped. His tiny chest heaved once, and his eyes fluttered shut. He lay still, his breathing slow and deep, as if he had fallen into the heaviest sleep of his life. Kojo sprinkled a final handful of herbs into the flames, and the smoke thinned. "It is done," he said quietly. "The bond is weakened, but you must still be watchful. Spirits do not let go easily." Alma gathered Kofi into her arms, feeling the warmth slowly return to his skin. He didn't stir. For the first time in days, the air around her felt lighter. Yet deep inside, she knew this might not be the end, only a fragile pause in something much darker. The next afternoon, Alma sat on the floor of the nursery, Kofi playing beside her. She didn't know what to expect. After the cleansing, the air in the room felt lighter, and Kofi had slept peacefully through the night for the first time in weeks. Still, as the clock neared 3:30, her heartbeat quickened. She watched the minute hand move, holding her breath. When it reached the exact moment, Kofi paused mid-play. His little head turned slowly toward the corner where he had always stared before. Alma tensed, ready for the usual laughter, but it didn't come. Instead, Kofi's lips curled into a small, calm smile, not the wild, excited grin she had grown used to, but something softer, almost knowing. His eyes lingered there for only a few seconds, as if acknowledging someone quietly standing in the shadows. Then, without a sound, he turned back to his toys and began playing again, humming to himself like nothing had happened. Alma's shoulders dropped with relief, but she couldn't ignore the faint shiver that moved through her. Something felt different. It wasn't gone, it had simply changed. That night, as she was putting away laundry, Alma remembered the photograph she had hidden deep inside her dresser drawer. She pulled open the drawer, moved aside folded clothes, and reached for the envelope, but her hand found only empty space. She searched frantically, pulling out everything, checking every corner. The photo was gone. Her mind raced. She had not touched it since the day she found it. No one else knew it was there. She stood frozen, staring at the empty spot, a mix of fear and unease swirling in her chest. In the quiet of the room, she thought she felt the faintest breath of cool air pass her cheek, almost like a goodbye. Alma closed the drawer slowly and went to check on Kofi. He was sleeping soundly, his tiny hand curled near his face. She stood watching him, torn between relief and worry, wondering if the spirit had finally left, or if it was simply waiting for the right moment to return.